Okay, hello, my cheeky friends. It's Matt here from Cheeky English, and we're going to start this exam skills course. This is lesson one. Okay, so let's just jump straight in, and we'll take you through it. So the first lesson is regarding relevance. So you'll find that in each of these lessons, we focus on a particular important point for exam preparation, and perhaps the most important one is relevance, making sure you answer the question correctly. So we'll go through each of these slides one by one, and I'd like you to sort of respond to me. Okay, so if you're listening, as if I'm talking to you. Okay, so please just read the following lesson aims, and you can discuss what you already know about these objectives. So let me read them out for you. By the end of this lesson, you will fully appreciate the writing examiner's point of view. You'll be able to distinguish between relevant and unnecessary content, and you will understand how to dissect a writing exam task and isolate its different components. Okay, so you can pause the video if you like, if you want to sort of talk about what you already know regarding this, or if you're with a partner, then you can have a little conversation about what you already know regarding these objectives. Okay, all right, let's move ahead. Okay, so here we've got a little task. So read this question and some example replies. Okay, so this is just a bit of an introductory task to this lesson. So the question is, what did you do this weekend? Well, here are some different responses. Let's actually listen to the different responses.
What did you do this weekend? I had such a hard week at work, I had to just completely disconnect. My boss has been putting a lot of pressure on me lately. I'm actually thinking about finding another job. Not much. I spent the whole weekend at my grandmother's. She has a lovely house on the coast. It was so nice to see her, and while I was there, I took advantage to do some windsurfing. I went out for dinner on Friday night with some friends from my art class. OMG, you'll never guess who we saw in the restaurant. I started reading this new book on the history of the Vikings. Did you know that the Vikings discovered America before Columbus?
Okay, so there we go. Just consider those different replies. They're all, I guess, relevant responses, but some are better than others. I think you'll probably agree with that. So let's have a look at the next task. Um, so, do the replies sound natural? Well, what do you think? By the way, if you have access to this, if you're either a teacher or a student and you have access to our system here, you can sort of check through your answers here. So, do they sound natural? The answer is yes. They all seem like normal responses. Okay, they might not all be particularly relevant, but they certainly are natural to some degree, I would say. Okay, let's have another look at the next task. Okay, which replies answer the question clearly and directly? Okay, so that's a different question. So which ones have like a quite a strong, clear response to what the question asks, which is, what did you do this weekend? Okay, so they all reply to that, but some of them sort of go off on different tangents. So just think about it for a minute and let me know what you think. Okay, yeah, you can pause the video now if you like, if you want to think about it. But before we go into the answers, I wanted to show you some functionality here. So if you look at this little robot here, it gives you a prompt at the top here, so you can write your answer here. So you can use AI to write in whatever you think. So if, for example, well, in my opinion, I think 2 is pretty relevant, and I would say that 3 is actually quite relevant and quite clear. It's a lot more expanded. The others seem to sort of go off on a bit of a tangent. They sort of are not completely focused on the question. So let's see what the AI thinks of that and whether it agrees with me. You just click this button again to get a response. So over here it will start thinking, and your response is correct. Replies 2 and 3 do answer the question clearly and directly. Good job. Okay, well done. So yeah, the suggested answer is 2 and 3 as well. Okay, so okay, what's the significance of this? Let's find out. Well, which replies divert from the question? Well, I think we can say that all the others seem to go off to talk about different things. For example, number 1, this person just talks about their job. and the pressure they're under, so they just completely answered something else almost. This person talks about Friday night out with dinner, but then starts talking about who they saw. It's sort of they change the direction of the question. And finally, number five, yep, they said they started reading a book, but then they start talking about the content of the book, which is again diverting from the question a little bit, but still quite natural. Okay, let's see. Yeah, 1, 4, and 5, obviously. Okay, which one do you like most, and why? Well, that's an opinion that you might like one or the others more, but like in terms of exam writing, or if you're thinking about an examiner, which is what this course is about, then you might want to consider what kind of response, if it was a speaking exam, for example, which one would be the best answer. So I think it has to be one of the relevant ones, which is 2 and 3, but 2 is obviously very short and doesn't give any information. Number 3 is great because it gives a longer sort of description of what they did during the weekend. So for me, it's 3, but that's up to you what you think. Okay. All right. So how might this relate to a written exam task? Well, think about that, pause the video, talk to your friend, talk to yourself if you like. And my personal suggestion here would be to say that it's, if you're given a question, obviously you won't get such a simple question as this probably in an exam, but if you're given a question, you have to make sure that it's firstly relevant and that you expand on it. You give examples and you give a bit more information. Okay, so this whole task is just to sort of get that point across. So let's see what the suggested answer is. In an exam, you should focus your answer on the question and avoid irrelevant information. Okay, perfect. Okay, so well, let's finish up with this question. What did you do this weekend? So pause the video and just give me a short answer, something like number 3, where you can give me a clear answer to this question and some examples of what you did during the weekend. So what did you do this weekend? Okay, all right, let's move on to the next task. Okay, look at this examiner marking your exam. Which of the statements do you think are true? So this guy is marking your exam. Now, we have to think about the examiner and their point of view, because in the end, when we're writing for an exam, we're not really writing a letter to somebody. We're not really writing a report for somebody. We're actually writing to an examiner, right? And that person is looking for particular things. So let's go through these one by one, and let me know what you think. Which of these are true and false? So we'll go through them one by one. So A here is give an objective evaluation of each candidate's performance. Well, of course, that's the idea. However, with it being a written exam, obviously it's not going to be completely objective. The examiner will, as any human being, will have to apply a little bit of their own opinion. So there is an element of subjectivity. So let's see what it says. Well, it says it's half true, as I said. Despite strict guidelines, marking exams is unavoidably subjective to some degree. Okay, so we can't avoid that subjectivity. So that subjectivity actually could be something in our favor in a way. If we can please the examiner, then that will obviously help give them the impetus to make the decision in our favor when we do an exam. Okay, it can also go against us, right? Okay, so let's move ahead. Spend a long time looking at your exam. Well, answer the question as you think, but I would suggest here that they don't want to be spending a long time looking at your exam. They're probably marking hundreds of exams and they want to get through them pretty quickly. So they're looking for key things and they're not going to spend a lot of time considering your answer, I imagine. Okay, let's be realistic. So let's see, false. Yeah, the only exception would be if you manage to write something especially difficult to read. So really, you want them to read it quickly, because you want it to be easy to read for them. Okay, good point. Next. Um, they want to finish as quickly as possible so they can do something more enjoyable. Again, let's be brutally honest. They may enjoy their job to some degree, but they're not going to, if they're doing hundreds of exams, they're not going to be particularly enjoying it. It's work for them, and they want to get it done as fast as possible. So that's true. Okay, delight in some wonderful reading. Oh, so the examiner's going to read it and think, oh, this person's such a good writer, perhaps the next Shakespeare, I don't know. No, not at all. They're just working, they want to get it out of the way, they want to give you a mark and move on to the next exam so they can finish quickly. So that's false. They're going to think extremely carefully about each detail because they don't want to miss an opportunity to give you a higher grade. I wish that were true, but obviously, again, with the high volume of work they have, they are not going to be particularly worried about you. They don't know you. It's completely blind for them, and they're just going to follow their guidelines and mark it as quickly as possible. So that's false. Okay. They're going to use a checklist to quickly identify what grade to give. Well, of course, yeah, they're going to have guidelines, and that will involve some form of checklist, certain guides that they have to mark you on particular uses of the language, how communicative you are, the language content, the presentation structure, all these other things. They're going to give you like a mark out of 5 or something, and that will help them to quickly identify what grade to give. And in fact, that's exactly what their job is, so that is definitely true. Okay, more on this later. All right then. They're going to be keen to learn new and complex viewpoints. So when you have to write an essay about something like global warming or social media or something like that, they're going to be very interested in learning new things from you. And no, they're not really. They're not really interested. I mean, if you come up with something interesting, then that's obviously good. Something a bit different, original, that's fine. However, really, they're not that interested. They just want to get it done. That's the theme, I think, of this task, is that the examiner just wants to get the exam marked. So that's really false. Okay. They're going to appreciate clear and relevant texts that make his or her job easier. Well, yes, of course. I think that, as we said, if you can make their job easier, that make their job, their reading experience faster, and they can quickly check off those points from their guidelines. The more you do that, the better. Okay, so and of course that's going to, they're going to feel happy. They're going to think, oh, this candidate's doing what they're supposed to do. I'm happy about that. So that's also going to feed into that subjective element, and and help you to get a higher grade. Okay, so that's true. Okay, so what can we conclude from this previous task? Can you make a little summary for me? Okay, so pause the video, think about a little summary of what we conclude from this discussion on the examiner. Well, before I show the answer, I would suggest that what we've talked about previously is that the examiner wants to get that job done quickly. They're going to use a checklist, they're going to use certain guidelines, and they're going to appreciate texts that are easy to read and that help them to get their job done quickly. Okay, so we can conclude that with the help of a checklist, examiners will spend a short amount of time grading your writing. Anything you can do to make their job easier will likely be beneficial. All right. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so look at the following exam task. Evaluate each person's interpretation. All right, so I'll read this writing task out for you. A specialist food website has asked you to write a review on a restaurant that you have visited, explaining what kinds of people it is likely to appeal to and which aspects you would most recommend to other food lovers. you should suggest at least one way in which you think the restaurant could improve. Okay, so this is a review task, okay, for a restaurant. All right, so we're going to evaluate each person's interpretation. So these are just comments that these candidates have made. This is not by any means exactly what they're going to write, but it's what they're planning to do. So this young lady here says, "I'm going to recommend." We can listen to it. So let's listen to what they say. Okay.
Writing task. A specialist food website has asked you to write a review on a restaurant you have visited, explaining what kinds of people it is likely to appeal to and which aspects you would most recommend to other food lovers. You should suggest at least one way in which you think the restaurant could improve. A. I'm going to recommend a new Italian restaurant. The pasta dishes are good, but the pizzas are amazing. The waiter was really nice. Honestly, there is nothing I would change about it. 5 stars. B. There is a great new Greek restaurant near me. I haven't been there, but it looks good for people who want to try something different. I recommend it because it looks interesting, and I haven't had Greek food before. They should improve their website, though. C. I will write about my experience at a new Japanese restaurant, saying that it is good for couples and families. I will recommend the service and the food, but I will suggest they have more variety on their menu and make some changes to the decoration. D. I will write an essay comparing Burger King and McDonald's. I prefer the burgers at Burger King, but the fries at McDonald's are better. I think they could both improve a lot, but they are perfect for young people.
Okay. All right. So let's check these out one by one. So they all seem more or less relevant, but let's check them out in more detail. So this one, A. I'm going to recommend a new Italian restaurant. The pasta dishes are good, but the pizzas are amazing. The waiter was really nice. Honestly, there's nothing I would change about it. 5 stars. Okay, so that seems like a reasonable reply. But let's see if there's anything sort of missing here. So if we look at the exam task again, you're writing for a website and you have to write a review on a restaurant you visited. Okay, you have to explain what kinds of people it is likely to appeal to. Okay, so I don't think this comment mentions anything about the kinds of people, so we're already missing an important part of this task. Which aspects you would most recommend to other food lovers? Okay, so yeah, the pizzas and the pasta, so that's good. You should suggest at least one way in which you think the restaurant could improve. Um, they say they would change nothing about it, so they're supposed to mention something. So there's 2 points there that this person has missed. Okay, so it's not completely relevant. So let's see what the suggested answer is. This person does not explain who the restaurant would appeal to. The task also requires at least one suggestion on how to improve. Okay, so it's getting a relevant score of 7 out of 10. So it's not bad, but it is missing some key things. That's maybe a bit generous, to be honest. Okay, let's look at B. There's a great new Greek restaurant near me. I haven't been there, but it looks good for people who want to try something different. I recommend it because it looks interesting and I haven't had Greek food before. They should improve their website though. Okay. All right, so they've made a suggestion on something to improve, right? But it's not really directly related to the restaurant itself. It's a little bit indirect, I would say. And clearly the person here hasn't been to the restaurant yet. So I think it's difficult really to recommend that. And especially as the task says that you recommend a restaurant that you have visited. Okay. And it mentions nothing about the types of people except people who, it's just not very direct. Okay. So this is not a good response. It's not very relevant. So let's see what the suggested answer is. This person has made the mistake of selecting a restaurant they have not visited. Okay, in order to make it relevant, they could pretend that they have visited it. Okay, so there's a key thing here. So when you're writing for an exam, it's important to if you can't think of it's good to use a real example if you can, because that will help you to come up with more authentic sounding replies. But if you can't really think of anything, you can make it relevant, you can change it to fit the task. So you have to use a certain level of imagination, I think, in some of these. So in this case, it would have helped if they pretended that they had actually visited it, and come up with some factors that could be improved. Okay, so relevant score 5 out of 10, not very good. Again, maybe a bit generous. Okay, C, I will write about my experience at a local Japanese restaurant, saying that it is good for couples and families. Okay, I will recommend the service and the food, but I will suggest that they have more variety on their menu and make some changes to the decoration. Okay, so I think this does everything. So they went to a Japanese restaurant. They're saying that it's good for couples and families, which is important. It says what kinds of people it is likely to appeal to. Okay. The aspects you would most recommend, good, the service and the food. And suggest at least one way in which you think the restaurant can improve. In this case, they've suggested two things, one being variety on the menu and also some changes to the decoration. All right, so I would say that's perfectly relevant. I mean, I don't think there's anything missing there. Let's see what score it gets. Yes, this is a good response which clearly includes each part of the task. Relevant score 10 out of 10. Okay, now this last one, which it's probably not the best. I will write an essay comparing Burger King and McDonald's. So first of all, it's an essay. We're looking for a review here, not an essay. I prefer the burgers at Burger King, but the fries at McDonald's are better. Okay, not particularly relevant. We're not supposed to be comparing two restaurants here. I think they could both improve a lot, but they are perfect for young people. Okay, so they've mentioned that these two restaurants are good for young people, but we're only supposed to be reviewing one restaurant to start with. And they could improve, but you need to say how they can improve. There's no mention of exactly what. Maybe Burger King could have better fries. I don't know. So let's see what the suggested answer is. This response diverts from the task. An essay is not required, nor the need to compare two different restaurants. Okay, and there's a lot more wrong with it. Again, another generous relevant score of 4 out of 10. All right, let's move ahead. Okay, look at how the task has been deconstructed. How would you personally respond to the task? Okay, so we're looking at the same task again. So I won't repeat this because we're very familiar with it now. But you'll notice that instead of having this long text, we can create like a deconstruction of the task so that we can clearly see what we need to do. So the main task is to review a restaurant. Okay, we need to do certain things. Firstly, we need to say who it would appeal to, the types of people. Okay, say what you would recommend. Okay, so whether it's a particular dish, the food, the atmosphere, and suggest at least one improvement. Okay, so that's basically a summarized version of this. And looking at this will help you to generate a plan and also focus your essay or your review in this case on making sure it's completely relevant and you're giving the examiner what they want, because the examiner is looking for these three things when they're marking your exam. Okay. All right. Oh yeah. So sorry, going back to that. It'd be good if you pause the video now and actually come up with your own response to this task. Just a quick paragraph just to say, choose a restaurant, tell me who it would appeal to, what would you recommend about it, and how could that restaurant be improved? Okay, so just pause the video and just come up with that statement for me. Okay, all right, now we can move ahead. Okay, your turn. All right, task 7. You are organizing a surprise birthday party for a friend. Okay, so it's a new writing task. Write an email to the guests explaining where the party will take place and when they should arrive. Provide information about transport options and make sure nobody spoils the surprise. Okay, so that means keep it a secret. Okay, so we're looking at this task now. Let's see what we're supposed to do next. Okay, clearly identify and isolate the subtasks. Okay, so pause the video again and just read that. And as we saw with that previous task, that deconstruction, I want you to sort of say main task, write an email, okay? And then come up with these subtasks that you need to do. Yep, so looking at the text, the first one will be where the party will take place, for example. Okay, so take 2 minutes there just to write down a quick deconstruction of this task. Okay, so let's look at the suggested answer. So writing an informal email, we need to talk about the location of the party, okay, the date and time, so when they should arrive, okay, transport options, okay, and remind them it's a secret. Yes, do not spoil the surprise. So we have to make sure we include all these points in our email, okay, and the examiner will be looking for you to complete those subtasks, okay. Okay, so now I want you to provide an initial response. So in the same way you did with the restaurant, I want you to just give me a quick response. You know, what are you going to do? What are you going to talk about? What are the details? Where's the party? When is it? What are the transport options? And etc. Okay, so let's pause the video and provide a nice little response for me. Okay. Okay, final thoughts. So we're coming to the end of this lesson. How does the process of isolating subtasks relate to the planning and structure of an exam task? Okay, so this is something we're going to move on to in the next lesson. So that deconstruction process of taking an exam question and dividing it into its sort of subtasks and isolating it, how's that going to help us in planning? Well, I would suggest that firstly, it's going to if we make sure we hit those points, it's going to help us to keep the text completely relevant and answer the question fully. But also, it's going to help us to provide a structure to our exam task, because each of those points can represent a paragraph, for example, in our text. And that will help to really, show the examiner exactly that we're doing the task. So if we mix it all together into one long paragraph, the information can get mixed together and it won't jump out. But if we give each of those subtasks its own small paragraph, then we can really demonstrate to the examiner that we're answering those questions and we're keeping it relevant, structured, and easy to read, which is really important. So let's have a look at the suggested answer. The process of isolating the subtasks provides us with a strong indication of what each paragraph should include. This will also ensure we provide well-structured and relevant content to the examiner. There you go. All right, so I'm going to move ahead, and this moves on to the next lesson, lesson 2, structure. Okay, so this is the end of the first lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you want to continue, well, we'll move on to structure next. Okay, take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.